But to constantly live in a state of this guy when he is one of the single best things happening to this franchise is unbelievable to me. I think people use their outrage du jour on Brock Purdy. Again, the 2 bad interceptions, that all happened. We get it. But the reason why you lose to the Lions is because you didn't force a punt. You gave up 40 points, and your kicker left 7 points on the field with 2 missed field goals and the point after touchdown for Brock Purdy. Just some perspective, right? Because perspective matters, and it seems like too many have none. The most games in 49ers franchise history with 3 or more passing touchdowns in the history of the franchise, Brock is already 4th all time. All time. Most games with 350 passing yards in 49ers history. Brock Purdy is already 3rd all time. The 2 guys that he is constantly behind are Joe Montana and Steve Young, which are literally the measuring sticks of professional quarterbacking excellence. He's nothing worse than just about as good as Montana and Young, and he's 3 years into his career. He had his 15th career game with 2 or more passing touchdowns and a passer rating of 115 or higher, which is the most such games by any player in the history of professional football in their first 3 seasons. If you can't recognize one of the best starts any career has ever had, and a guy who is only not living up to the reputations of Joe Montana and Steve Young. And if that's not good enough for you, again, maybe football's not for you. And certainly 49ers football is not for you. And I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a Brock Purdy jersey and insist he's your favorite player. But to constantly live in a state of this guy when he is one of the single best things happening to this franchise is unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable to me. So if you don't like Brock Purdy, you know what? I hope he's damaged good and he never plays again. And
don't say that. Don't say that.
No, here's the thing. How do Brock Purdy haters, what needs to happen to totally ruin their seasons? Because you don't deserve anything. You really don't. You really don't. You were cheering.
Well, it's good. And it's the quarterback head coach thing where it's like, the quarterback and the head coach always have to take the blame. You know, it's like complaining about a quarterback who completed 77% of his passes, 377 yards and 3 touchdowns, and also had a rushing touchdown and looked pretty damn good most of the night. But those picks are those picks, and you can't throw them. But you know what are picks? Picks is when you have pressure on the quarterback. Now I thought the makeshift offensive line, believe it or not, did a decent job. But and this defense is not a great defense that the Lions have. I mean, the Lions, to me, I had 2 takeaways last night. Damn the 49ers for playing Brock Purdy in meaningless time when I told them how stupid it was and how reckless it was in the pregame, and they're still out there in the 4th quarter. So that was one thought. The other thought was this Detroit team is really exciting on offense, and they're not winning anything this year. No. Because they don't have good enough defense. That defense is not a championship caliber defense. It's just not.
The fact that offensive line handled that defensive front is a serious warning to the Detroit Lions that enjoy your regular season, but in the playoffs you will be beaten. I believe that now. I think they're going to get beat up front by either.
They don't have enough.
Look, Minnesota should handle them next year. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of amazing that the Lions played their guys, considering that game meant nothing to them, and next week's game is the single most important game in Lions franchise history. You're either the 1 seed with a week off, or you're not. I mean, next week.
I mean, here's the thing. Did it make more sense for the Niners to sit Purdy or for the Lions to sit Goff? You could make the argument Goff, but the thing is, Goff, you want to keep sharp because next week he's got an important game. There's no important game next week for Brock Purdy. He couldn't play a game. It doesn't sound like next week. We'll find out more details later today.
Kyle's commitment to some questionable game plans. And the whole okay, so you really want to win now tonight, Kyle. The mantra is win at all costs. This is the Lions game is my personal season Super Bowl. All right. Well, why are you only running the ball 4 times in the second half? When you have a defense that is screaming, if you put us out on this field, we're going to give up another touchdown. Why wouldn't you try to keep the other team's offense on the field and play a little defense with ball control, play a little defense by running the ball, playing a little defense by killing clock. But
how about this? You said fourth quarter? How about first quarter? How about the first quarter? The Niners only had 7 rushing attempts in the first quarter. They came out throwing. Now, I understand the Lions' pass D's not great. They probably had a bunch of guys up on the line of scrimmage, blah, 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 blah.
Hey, touchdown on 3
Protect your quarterback. If you were going to play Brock Purdy, you needed to have a 60. We talked about it yesterday. If you're going to play Brock Purdy, I was totally against it. You needed to be about 60-40 run pass. Well, guess what? The game was a 1-point game at the end of the first quarter. The Niners led 21-13 at the end of the second quarter. It was anybody's game. The 49ers, there was no separation on the scoreboard, Damon, until much later in the game. So it's like, what the heck are they? I mean, this game was a 7-point game in the third quarter. It was 28-21. Guess what? It all can't be fucking awesome because you're 6 wins after being predicted to win the Super Bowl. So let's get a little tougher. Let's raise our standard. Let's fire some people. Let's try to upgrade our situation. Let's start there instead of run it all back. I mean, you're not the Chiefs with 3 rings.
Well, and how about this?
Why are you running it back? You're not good enough. You haven't been good enough yet. And you're running it back like you've been plenty good enough. The 94 49ers could run it back. You cannot run it back.
So the thing about Shanahan is, it is time to get some new blood in here. And then when you get the new blood in here, don't go about grinding that new blood down to a nub. I mean, his dad did this too. He would take a player and literally ruin that player. Just overuse him. Robert Griffin in his final game, like his knee was dangling by a thread and they got him in shotgun. They're asking him to do quarterback draws. Like everything screamed, get this guy off the field. He's hurt. But they just ask him to do ridiculous things for an injured player. And I think that he ground the Christian McCaffrey. He is going to grind the out of Jordan Mason, the overuse there.
In the past years, they didn't do this. In the past years, he's had Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Elijah Mitchell. He spread the ball around. But with McCaffrey, he loves him so much that he just used him. I don't know. I don't know what to say because he
likes the toy so much he breaks it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. Like, Ozzy, I told you not to do that. You're going to break it if you keep on doing that. But he loves it so much, he went out and he broke it.
I would say this. Unless they get full clearance on Brock Purdy, I almost kind of feel like Kirk Cousins is almost likely. And I will say this, though. If Kirk Cousins was at the right price and at the right point in his career, he might be perfect. Why? Did you see the way he took Michael Penix under his wing at every timeout? Did you see how he consulted with him? That's what a pro does. Kirk Cousins might have flaws as a player, but he has no flaws as a guy. He's a hell of a guy.
Yeah,
and he would be a good guy for Brock. I mean, he absolutely would. Imagine it this way. If you had Kirk Cousins in a situation like yesterday where Brock throws a couple picks, you could go to Kirk Cousins. You could pull
Kirk Cousins threw so many bad picks this year, dude.
He had a bad year.
8 interceptions in a row in between touchdowns at one point. I mean, here's the thing.
That's why you could get him for nothing.
Good for Brock Purdy because Kyle would immediately start blowing Kirk Cousins every single second that he got. There's no doubt this is a bad football team.
But they have reached the NFC Championship game 4 times and 2 Super Bowl appearances in 8 seasons since they hired Lynch and Shanahan. So for those of you going, they got to get rid of Lynch, they got to get rid of Shanahan. Okay, these guys are not perfect. John Lynch has made a lot of mistakes for sure, especially at the top of the draft. And Shanahan has made a lot of in-game mistakes for sure. But the bottom line is kind of the bottom line. And 4 NFC Championship games and 2 Super Bowl appearances in 8 seasons is a pretty damn good record. This was their first losing season since 2020. Now, why was I so passionate about sitting Brock Purdy last night? Because it's clear to me, and it should be clear to John and to Kyle and to all of you, that it's next year or they are under the gun. Like, they're not going anywhere, but if this season repeats itself next year, they're gone.
Right. Well,
they're going to go from not going anywhere to gone in 1 year.
The Super Bowl window, it's closed. The Super Bowl window is closed. Now, they might reopen one quickly here, but to me, what we've seen is now over. This is a line in the sand between, the close but not good enough to win it all start to Kyle's career, and then this year, and needs to start changing the following year. They're going to have a last place schedule to negotiate. They will be set up with an opportunity to make hay while the sun is shining on a last place schedule that should benefit them. Hopefully they won't have all of this rest disparity working against them, and it's a better year, and they don't have a choppy off season, and they do have a good draft class. Again, they can keep a pretty good thing on the tracks here with just a few good decisions along the way. They're not far away from being a team that matters again.
Here's the bottom line. John Lynch has missed on 20 picks in the first 3 rounds. He needs to be uncomfortable. You need to have another draft consultant there to help out, to be another voice in the room, because that's too many misses. He needs to be uncomfortable. Kyle Shanahan probably needs to bring in an offensive coordinator, or at least some in-game guru who can help him manage clock and situations and take some stuff off his plate. He needs to be uncomfortable. There's no question in my mind that Brock Purdy needs to be uncomfortable. Stop putting Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs type quarterbacks around him. Get somebody in that room that can absolutely take the job away from him and make him uncomfortable. Same thing with that offensive line. My God, Chris Forster told us 5 times this year how great Jake Brendel was.
He is not.
Take Jake Brendel away from him because he no longer has objective. He's lost his objectivity, so he needs to be made uncomfortable. And the guy who really needs to be made uncomfortable is Nick Sorensen, who is probably uncomfortable this year a little bit with Brandon Staley, but he probably needs to be either replaced or demoted, or there needs to be more defensive personnel, because this coverall, like Mike Singletary had this stupid freaking coverall because he didn't have the answers at the presser. He'd be like, I got to watch the film.
Got to watch the tape.
I got to watch the film. Why? You don't know what you're watching. And then Sorensen lately has been like, hey, just a communication breakdown. Just a communication breakdown. Well, here's a communication break. Here's a communication that's going to get through. Either get it going or hit the bricks.
Right. You know where I saw communication.
That was communicated from me to you. Either get it going and get some better players and a better fucking scheme, or get somebody else, because last night wasn't good enough. If this defense hides behind that bogus yard stat and while ignoring how horrible they've been in situational defense, and guess what situational defense highlights? Coaching.
Look,
if you're bad in situational defense, that means you're probably poorly coached.
Renardo Green made a great play early in the game to break up a touchdown, and then he got beat in the corner by Amon-Ra St. Brown for that touchdown. And I thought that there was a true communication breakdown right there. Looked like the coverage split and broke, it was Renardo Green, dude. When you walk to the line of scrimmage, you have to say to yourself, down and distance. And guess what? You should never have to say that on the goal line. What are you defending 4 yards in the end zone? Guess what? You get 7 points if you get a touchdown. It doesn't matter if you score the touchdown 5 yards deep in the end zone. You don't get 10 points if it's a touchdown 5 yards into the end zone. So what are you doing 4 yards into the end zone, allowing a catch at the goal line? And let the guy, what would you say you're doing there? He either lost focus, he lost concentration, he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know what the hell happened there. That was pitch and catch, and it was way, way too easy. And that's an embarrassment. When you're watching that on the film, what exactly are you saying as a player? I didn't know the end zone mattered. My Purdy takes are not confusing. My Purdy takes are very consistent. I said he was a player a year and a half before he actually became the Niner quarterback. I still believe he's a player. Is he? I've never said he's a Hall of Famer ever. And I don't think he's a top tier quarterback. I think he's a solid second tier quarterback who is plenty good enough to win with, but you're not going to win solely because of him. But if you surround him with good enough talent, there's no doubt in my mind that Brock Purdy will wear Super Bowl rings. And I think eventually it's going to happen.
but he's not going to carry. He's not Josh Allen. He can't just be like, hey, you know what? It's 3rd and 20. Drop me back to pass, and I'll pull something out of my ass. He's not one of those 4 or 5 truly elite guys. So if you can find a truly elite guy, say goodbye to Brock Purdy. That's how I feel. But without a truly elite guy, stay with Brock Purdy. And I agree with Damon. A young guy and an old guy.
Thanks for watching. Tune into the Damon Bruce Show live on YouTube every weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific.